Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how we could invest £5,000, what we can do to increase our returns, maximise growth and hold security all at the same time. So let's get into it. Hey everyone, okay, £5,000. What are we going to do with £5,000? How are we going to invest it? Where's it going to go? What are we going to put it into? Well, before we get into that, I just want to say a quick disclaimer. There's no financial advice here, only my opinions, my thoughts, and what I would do with that £5,000 in today's market. I would also like to say, clear down any debt. I always strongly recommend that you wipe any credit that you owe, any debt that's going to hold you back. So let's try and bring ourselves to a blank canvas. So when we're investing, we're heading forwards, we're not going backwards. So we can really maximize on the money that we're talking about now. So assuming we are at a blank canvas, no debt owed, no credit owed, what are we going to do with £5,000? Well, let's be realistic. We're not going to buy a property with £5,000. It's not £50,000 and it's not £500,000. So we're not going to see huge amounts of return. We're not going to see huge amounts of growth on £5,000. However, that's not to say that £5,000 isn't a lot of money and it's hard earned and it's hard saved. So let's try and maximise to what we can actually do. And what I'm going to now show you is how I would break down my funds, looking at the stocks and shares, looking at the index funds, looking at some play money to kind of up our risk and see if we can get a better return on our money, looking at precious metals, I'm talking about gold, and how we can use gold as an insurance policy, but also keeping it as an asset class that grows in value. And also the benefit of gold is it's liquid. We can sell it, we can draw back down on our cash. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the board behind me. I've broken it down into 3 categories, and what you need to decide as the investor of this £5,000 is, what are you after? What are your personal goals? Are you after returns, growth, or security, or perhaps a bit of all 3? Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at all 3. I'm going to show you how I would break it down and really then look at the percentages and what the value of those percentages are to hopefully generate some good returns and a bit of income and some security with that £5,000. So let's have a look at the board behind me, and we're going to jump straight into it and hopefully break it down so it gives you a bit of information to what you might be able to do with your fund. 3 ways in which we can break down that £5,000, try and maximise and grow that pot. So how can we do that? Well, there's 3 ways in which we can do it, and let's take a look. So that's returns, growth and some security. So how are we going to generate return on a portion of that £5,000? Well, for me personally, I would use something called peer-to-peer lending, which is actually something I use now. And it is a platform where multiple investors pool their money together and they lend it out to a company or an individual in return for a high interest rate, certainly something that beats the bank. And typically I will see between 6 to 8% ROI on the money that I invest. And term will be typically between 6 to 18 months. So just remember to have a realistic expectation. But peer-to-peer overall is a great platform to medium to long term to generate some good returns on a portion of this £5,000 that we're going to use. And I'm going to break down shortly the percentages of what that would look like into each of these categories. So we're going to look at growth. How are we going to grow a portion of that £5,000 long term? Well, there are many ways to do that, and I'm sure you've heard of ETF, mutual funds, index funds, but for me it is the index fund that wins. And through that I use the Vanguard S&P 500, following 500 of the biggest companies such as Nestle, Apple, Amazon, Toyota, many more, which basically is a passive index market tracker. The Fidelity World Fund, another great fund in order to put your money into, and the returns you will typically see on average, if you look at past performance, so take a look at them here, I'll pop them up, the Vanguard and the Fidelity World Fund, we'll see anywhere between 20 and 25%. Now, we need security as well to build into this £5,000. We need to be sensible, and we need to allocate some to a security. But what we can do is we can still grow some while in that security pot. For me, I will be going towards gold. But before we look at gold, yes, you could be picking a high interest rate ISA account. For me personally, it's not my go-to. Gold is going to be my go-to here. It's got a huge history of great growth in its value. You can have it in many forms, but the physical form for me is always the best of gold. It's liquid, it's an insurance policy, and you can draw down on that cash once you've sold it almost instantly. You're not tied to anything. You don't need to be waiting for a fund to release that, and there are no fees to be charged in order to sell up your gold. And the bonus is it increases in value. So yes, it's a security, but also you are getting growth. So it kind of adds to the other two pots, the returns and the growth. So what we're going to look at next is the way that I'll actually break down that £5,000 into percentages and the value of that. So let's take a look at that. So now let's have a look at where we're going to put this £5,000 and how can we really make that pot grow as much as possible and realistically as possible. So let's have a look at how I would break that down into percentages and value. So my biggest allocation, first of all, is going to be going to peer-to-peer. I want to generate returns as quick as possible. So 35% of that is going to peer-to-peer, £1,750 of that £5,000 pot. Next, I'm going to be putting it into an index fund, S&P 500 or the Fidelity World Fund at 25% allocation, £1,250. I want to see that long-term growth following the trends in the markets. Next, I want some security, but I want value increasing, and I want some liquidity there. So that's going to be through gold at 20%, which is £1,000. Now, something I haven't mentioned, which is shares. Now, what I mean by shares is hand-picking shares. What's going to be the next Amazon? What's going to be the next Microsoft or even Tesla? Well, that's up to you to decide and you to find out. But what I am going to allocate is I'm going to allocate 15% of that £5,000 to go and hand-pick and buy possibly 1, 2, 3 or even 4 shares of a company that I believe is going to go skyrocket. So how are we going to do that? Well, that's just pure research. That's looking for the next product that's in demand. But I do believe that we should be upping our risk with that little bit of money because the reward is that much greater. And ultimately that's going to really generate quite nicely with that 5,000 pot if it pays off, but we are upping the risk for a greater reward. So 15% to go and hand pick some shares, perhaps on Morgan & Stanley or Hargreaves & Lansdown. They're all good sites, and I will pop down in the description below some links that you can use and some recommendations of the sites that I also use. So lastly, we have buy and sell at 5%, £250. So what do I mean by buy and sell? I mean you could set up an eBay shop. I used to have an eBay shop buying and selling all different types of goods, and what I used to do is I used to buy them cheap at Car Boot, Gumtree, off of all kinds of different sites, and I used to sell them for a profit on eBay. So I have allocated a small portion of that. It will take some work on your part, but you could scale £250 to perhaps 500 or even 750, even to £1,000 over maybe a period of a couple of months, which ultimately is actually beating the returns of some of those other avenues that we've just put our money into. But I am going to put only a small portion at 5% to go and buy and sell, but you can pick up some real bargains where actually you can do real quick and easy flips. So that's how I would break down £5,000. Now, you know, there is no easy answer. There is a million videos of how to break this down, but I hope this has offered some insight and value on realistically £5,000, breaking it down and growing it, maximising the returns, but also holding some security, because we need to be sensible with it. We can't up our risk too much where essentially we lose that entire £5,000. So it does need to be diversified. And the saying goes, don't keep all your eggs in one basket. That is completely true. So I hope this has offered some value. If it has, please hit the like and subscribe button for more content. And as always, thank you for watching if you've got this far, and I will speak to you all soon. Please feel free to reach out to me on social media. Thank you very much. See you on the next video.